Hello and welcome to episode 44 of Diabetics for Diabetics Radio. Today's episode is titled Bowie's Gut Check. We're going inside, all right? I got a at-home microbiome test and we're going over the results, all of the bacteria, food, everything that you need to be concerned about as someone with diabetes. So let's get at it. If we haven't met yet, my name is Bowie. I have had type 1 diabetes for over 23 years. About 2 years ago, I became so disheartened with my experience with diabetes from a diabetes care standpoint, my endocrinologist, my doctors, as well as kind of my outlook on the disease itself. I wanted more from the services for diabetes. And then personally, I was just so kind of sick of having it at all. And I wanted to know why there hadn't been any progress made in that direction. And so I decided to go out on my own. And ever since those 2 years ago, I have been peeling back the layers to diabetes and learning more than any professional education resource had ever taught me before. And with what I've learned, I have made major advancements in both my understanding of the disease as well as my care for the disease. Increased insulin sensitivity, decreased insulin usage, less inflammation, just major improvements to my energy and blood sugar control as a whole. And so with that, I'm sharing it all here. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's go ahead and get started with episode 44. So in this video, we're going to briefly touch on some of the well-documented connections between gut health and diabetes health. Then we'll talk about my experience with the Viome gut intelligence test and all of the information that I got back from it. So all the way from sample collection, the process of working with Viome and getting my information back, the health scores they provide, as well as the constructive feedback from the bacterial strains found in my sample, the food recommendations, the personalized supplement and probiotic blends that they offer. And throughout all of this, I'm going to tell you how I process this information for my own understanding using AI. So I have a particular AI service that I really enjoy and has been a huge help in getting another level of understanding beyond just reading test results. So we'll touch on that and let's go ahead and get started. So with that gut health and diabetes connections. Start by looking at how gut health impacts diabetes. Now, we all know that the microbiome in our gut has major effects on how our immune system works. About 70 to 80% of our immune system and all of the cells and all of the markers for it are housed in our guts. And there's a couple of different ways that relationship works. So some people are familiar with leaky gut syndrome. I know a lot of people with diabetes who have clinically diagnosed GI issues. Some don't, some do. But those that do, leaky gut is one of the most popular ones. And for those that don't know, leaky gut is where the lining of our gut is actively leaking bacteria and harmful pro-inflammatory molecules into our bloodstream and causes downstream inflammation from there. Now, this leaky gut may be causing inflammation that is harming our beta cells. Could be, we don't know. But there's also other ways that it can influence. So it may be gut-centric, right? So there's something physically wrong with the gut that is causing inflammation. There may be microbes within the gut that are causing that inflammation, the microbial dysbiosis. So, if we aren't properly balanced in our bacterial strains, that could be a source of inflammatory molecules that causes issues with diabetes downstream. All of this inflammation circulating around, whether it's the physical structure of the gut itself or the contents of the gut, it's disrupting our ability to regulate our blood sugars. And there are specific bacterial strains tied to improper digestion of carbohydrates. Digestion plays such a huge part in a healthy insulin response. And so we need to make sure that all of these boxes are being checked in our guts to ensure that we are able to properly manage our diabetes. Now, research and strategies for gut health. So, early life gut health studies have shown that for infants and young children who have an altered gut microbiome, this puts them at a much greater risk for developing type 1 diabetes later in life. There are particular strains that are tied to that. We won't touch on that so much in this episode, but it's demonstrated that supplementing prebiotics and probiotics, both the bacteria themselves, which are the probiotics, and the food for those bacteria to help them flourish and create an environment where they can live happily among all the others. Those are the prebiotics. Now, supplementing with those early on is an excellent way for reestablishing balance and reducing these inflammatory responses. Talking about food for bacteria, diets rich in fiber, healthy fats, and fermented foods can help reduce the gut inflammation and support healthy microbiome. And of course, there's always ongoing research on different diets. Plenty of people talking about carnivore, keto, fruits, what have you. No matter what you're eating, it's having an impact on the balance of gut bacteria, and it's important to get ahead of what's going on in your gut so that you can positively influence it. Now let's go ahead and press the rewind button a little bit and learn more about my personal gut history, because I see mine as being a little bit of an anomaly. I didn't have any really profound GI issues that I would associate with something like inflammatory bowel disease or Crohn's disease or anything like that. There are some stories, again, I was too young to remember, but there are some stories when I was a kid growing up that I was constipated. My mom recalls one time when I did not go to the bathroom, number 2, for 2 weeks, which, if you were to tell me that today, it was like, red alert, there's something wrong. But at that time, she said she brought me to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, it's going to come out sometime, just wait until it happens. And it did. And then nobody ever talked about it ever again. Again, kind of weird. But I was diagnosed with celiac disease in 2014. This was after playing college athletics for a little bit. I was trying to gain weight and couldn't, despite my caloric intake. And one of the things that they thought of was celiac disease preventing my ability to gain weight, because I was eating a lot of gluten-heavy foods, things like pasta, pizza, what have you, to gain weight for my athletic career. And none of it was working. And so I tested positive for celiac. I went gluten-free and put on all of the weight that I had wanted to for my athletics. So celiac disease, again, demonstrating some degree of inflammation and allergic reaction to food. After college and into my years of alternative health, I have done some parasite cleanses before that were incredibly successful in getting rid of parasites, flukes, roundworms, pinworms. I'm sure there were plenty that I didn't see. I went through 2 rounds of this, and this was, I'm trying to think of the doctor's name, I don't remember, but I'll post something about it in the description. Liver and gallbladder flush. I was able to clear my liver and gallbladder of calcified gallstones. And after I did the flush, I learned a lot more about what that meant in terms of digestion and my ability to digest fats and absorb food through my gut. Again, just a sign of an imbalance, sign of blockages and malabsorption issues. So again, nothing outward, like I didn't get sick. Nothing made me go to the bathroom. I never got diarrhea, but I was clearing out all of these pathways that I didn't even know were clogged to begin with. So it was just kind of eye-opening to have all of these experiences when I didn't even know that I had anything wrong to begin with.
So I want to take a little extra time here and just emphasize how little reason I had to believe that I had any long-standing GI distress issues, because in my childhood, in my early adulthood, I had no outward symptoms, right? And I know a lot of people who have diabetes piggybacked on top of something like Crohn's or IBS, and they have major food sensitivities, major allergies. I had none of that. Obviously, I had celiac diagnosis in my college years, but that was asymptomatic. So I can't emphasize how important it is to stay curious, right? And be willing to try something out, even if you're not quite sure if it applies directly to you. Obviously, having type 1 implied that I had some inflammatory issues, but when I did the liver flush and when I did my parasite cleanses, it was like so eye-opening. I had no idea I had all of that going on inside of me. And once I kind of established that, whoa, there is way more going on below the surface that I can tell outwardly, I better start looking at my gut. And that's when my Viome test came in.
So these are some of the stats. This is kind of like the sales pitch on the Viome website, talking about all of the features of the gut intelligence test. So health scores, they talk about functional scores, they talk about pathway activities going on in our gut, measuring different metabolic byproducts found in the stool sample that you send in. They give you a whole readout on the foods that you may be sensitive to, the foods that may be good for you, and we'll cover all of that later on in the podcast. They talk probiotics, prebiotics, and ideal supplements to help benefit your current health and gut status, all looking to address gut inflammation, improve how food moves through your gut, and decrease some of the negative symptoms of impaired gut health. So it was an easy decision for me. I did some back end research as to what test could be the right test. There were a lot of different ones. I feel like there's more and more. It's a very strong emerging market, but I picked Viome. I just found this good website that talked about the what and the why behind Viome. I liked how comprehensive it was. It covered the specific bacterial strains, and then it gave you ratings for different health metrics. Like, I'm interested in my microflora, so like how balanced everything is, the inflammation tied to how everything was going, and then any sort of adjustments that I could make to improve it. So it had everything I was looking for. And so I decided to pull the trigger. Now, the process itself for using the gut intelligence test is fairly straightforward. The stool collection, again, it may make some people uncomfortable. You're dealing with your poop, but again, fairly simple. They give you this neat little setup on the toilet. You catch a sample of your stool, you put it into a vial, you shake it up, and you send it back. They give you a return label, you send it back to their lab, which I think is in Washington State. About 2-week turnaround time. I think mine was a little under 2 weeks, but they say 2 to 3 weeks. In the meantime, after you send your sample, they require you to complete a health questionnaire. Takes about 30 to 45 minutes. It's relatively extensive in terms of your eating habits, your sleep habits, your mental health habits, what have you. You send that in, and then you just wait for your results. And once they're uploaded onto your dashboard, you're able to access everything and put it into action. So one quick note about the questionnaire. I know everyone is a little bit timid on sharing personal information, health information in particular. So they made the point to say they're not sharing your information. They're honoring HIPAA laws, and they don't sell your data. Also, from the questionnaire standpoint, these are the specific, which I thought was interesting. These are things that I wouldn't right away think were tied to gut health, but general information about you, information about your stool, like how frequently you go, the consistency, how well your food is digested, oral health, brushing your teeth, bad breath, growth on your tongue, sleep habits, mental health, digestive health, your medical history. For mine, I did share that I had type 1 diabetes. Any symptoms and conditions, gas, bloating, what have you, as well as skin health, which is another interesting one I wouldn't have tied to gut health. But that was that. Fairly straightforward. So 2 weeks go by, I get my results uploaded. It's got functional scores, pathway activities, and then the recommendations based on my score. And they rank you from a 0 to 100 scale. Kind of like 0 to 30, I would say, is probably suboptimal. You're in this in-between range, probably from 30 to 70 is like somewhere on average. And these scores are all compared to the rest of people who have tested with Viome. And then obviously anything 70 and above, you're in that optimal range. As you can see, this is my score. I scored a 45. So I am just south of right middle average. And we'll talk a little bit more about my scores here. So these are the functional scores that Viome uses. So they use inflammatory activity, metabolic fitness, digestive efficiency, gut lining, protein fermentation, gas production, your microbial diversity, and then microbiome-induced stress. I scored, and you can kind of tell on the bar here where I fell from 0 all the way down here to 100. And I'm average for everything. Kind of like less than 50%. You can kind of see I'm kind of on the lower end of average. And the only one that tripped the alarm for not being average was protein fermentation. So let's talk about what each of these means in just a brief sentence here. So inflammatory activity. This score measures the activities of your microbes that can contribute to or reflect inflammation in my gut environment. So this is using specific substances in my stool sample to measure, how many inflammatory byproducts are there? What does this indicate for my ability to clear pathogens, to digest food, what have you? Metabolic fitness represents microbial organisms and functions that are associated with blood sugar, insulin resistance, and weight control. This has to do with digesting food as well as particular bacterial strains that deal with digesting foods. Digestive efficiency, comprehensive microbial reflection of my GI tract functions. So this is a lot of different activities kind of put together in a composite. So movement of food, the speed of digestion, specific macronutrient breakdown, and the gut lining health. So how healthy are my tissues, like preventing leaky gut? You've got gut lining health individually, focusing on that intestinal barrier. You've got the protein fermentation. This is whether or not I am properly digesting proteins, which we learned I'm not doing a great job at. Gas production, that's self-explanatory. Microbial diversity. So this is talking about the balance between good, bad, and all of the pieces that go into making a healthy microbiome. And then microbiome-induced stress. So based on your microbial diversity, how is that impacting your inflammation and your body's ability to handle stress?
So, as a recovering nerd, I am still super sensitive to getting bad scores on a test. So, I was amazed that protein fermentation, the fact that I scored low on my ability to digest proteins. This was doubly confusing because as someone with diabetes, I thought protein was our best friend, right? It promotes satiety, which prevents us overeating. It helps regulate our glucose spikes. It helps improve insulin sensitivity. I thought protein was one of my friends. So I had to look a little bit deeper.
So after I thought about it a little while, it started to make a little bit more sense why I may not be digesting proteins quite as well. Now, from a diabetes perspective, I'm out the starting gate, not properly digesting glucose properly. And if that's the case, my body is going to be more inclined to digest proteins than the average person, right? So there alone, my body is geared towards digesting proteins more than carbohydrates. So I'm more liable to have byproducts of incomplete protein digestion. Um, but I thought it was interesting to learn about the byproducts of undigested protein fermenting in your lower GI tract. Ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, indoles, and phenols. These are all byproducts that can cause inflammation in your GI tract. And so I just thought this was interesting, right? So, what are some ways that I can improve my ability to digest protein? And is it really that bad? Is it improving? Is it getting worse? I'm not quite sure, but there are some things to consider based on all of the information I got. The majority of my scores were average, but closer to the suboptimal end of the spectrum. So again, tested average, that makes that pass the eye test. It makes me feel good about my results, but kind of on the lower end. I want to make sure that I'm, going in the right direction, headed towards optimal. From the protein digestion standpoint, okay, I didn't score very well for that. And I could be producing more harmful byproducts. But based on the specific byproducts of incomplete protein digestion, none of my scores were thrown off by that, or by a lot, enough to put me in suboptimal. So if I was really, really bad at not digesting protein, then it would harm my inflammatory markers. It would harm my gas production and gut lining, right? So it's not enough to kind of skew everything in the wrong direction. So it made me think that I'm trending in the right direction, and I'm leaving that suboptimal, headed into average and into optimal. So after those functional scores, it gets into the specifics on pathways, right? So these are the biochemical reactions that produce beneficial or harmful molecules. These were my scores. As you can see, I am across the board average. Okay, you can take a look at we're going to go through all of the names here. So TMA, ammonia, butyrate, LPS, all of that. We'll talk about that now. So TMA, which is trimethylamine, I believe. Trimethylamine. I should have looked that up before I did this, but it's a metabolic byproduct that has the potential to create a pro-inflammatory molecule. So if TMA is trimethylamine, TMAO is trimethylamine oxidase, right? And TMAO in the liver and in the bloodstream can create issues. I know it has direct ties to atherosclerosis. So again, just a bad molecule to have hanging around. I tested average on it. Ammonia production. This comes down to improper food digestion and kind of it off-gassing ammonia. And ammonia can, it's just obviously not good for you. So it can negatively impact neurotransmitter production, cognitive function, and mitochondrial health. Butyrate. Butyrate is a great thing in your health. It is a short-chain fatty acid known to positively affect lots of things. So gut lining health, insulin sensitivity, and the ability to feel full. Butyrate is the primary energy source for cells in the colon and is able to prevent inflammation. So butyrate and just short chain fatty acid, those are two important substances to know when it comes to improving your gut health. Opposite that, LPS biosynthesis, this is lipopolysaccharide. So lipopolysaccharides are pro-inflammatory molecules that gut microbes make to trigger an immune response. Like if something's going wrong, LPS biosynthesis goes up, inflammatory response goes up as well. Again, I tested average for this, so I wasn't in the danger zone. Methane gas, same thing, off-gassing from bacteria. More methane is produced, the worse off your digestion is. So if you're not digesting food fully, you are producing more gas. Oops, going too fast here. Okay, sulfide gas. Sulfide, again, another gas. If you're not properly digesting foods, with this one, they talked about specific foods that had sulfates and sulfites, dried fruit, preserved meats, and wine. Wine has sulfites in it. This gas production can be harmful, and it does have direct ties to diabetes as well. Flagellar assembly, and this is one that I had never heard of before, but flagella are like little tails on bacteria that they use to kind of move around. And like you see here, often in response to a threat or undesirable environment, these microbes create a flagella to move someplace else, right? So the more flagellar things you have hanging out in your gut, that's a sign that your microbes are not happy where they're at and they're trying to go someplace else. Again, I didn't have a whole lot. It's basically like an empty trailer where it's like, oh, wait, is somebody moving around here? Why is somebody trying to get out of here? So that was good to see. Putrescin production. Putrescin is a molecular byproduct of protein fermentation. Keep in mind, I did not test well. I was suboptimal in my protein fermentation. If the activities of putrescin production pathways are too high, it can be harmful to the gut environment and the intestinal barrier lining. Interesting to note here, I tested suboptimal for protein fermentation, but I was average in a byproduct of poor protein fermentation. Interesting. A little bit of an inconsistency, but I'm taking that as my score for protein fermentation is improving because I don't have a suboptimal score for the byproducts of protein fermentation. Next is oxalate metabolism. This oxalate gets thrown around a lot in leafy greens. So oxalate is a naturally occurring compound found in a lot of plant foods. It can form oxalate salts, which steal minerals. Like oxalate is known as an anti-nutrient because it can steal things away. It leads to calcification and the buildup of kidney stones. But I showed an ability to metabolize them fairly well. Uric acid, high levels of uric acid are associated with gout, kidney stones, hypertension. Again, this has to do with the improper digestion of food, the improper filtering of your blood, and the calcification of uric acid and your inability to digest it. Salt stress, microbial pathways. I did not have too much salt in my gut. Biofilm, chemotaxis, and virulence. This score assessed my ability, or it measured whether or not my gut was a hostile environment, and it was not. It was an average level of hostility. And then bile acid. This one was particularly comforting for me because bile comes from your liver. I've focused a lot on cleaning my liver out and making sure that it's healthy. So it's good to see that I had a good ability to digest fats and absorb fat-soluble vitamins. So, like I mentioned, I was rated as not optimal for protein digestion, but tested average for all of the possible harmful byproducts. Good to know. For uric acid, again, I was in the average range. Good to see my DNA results, which I haven't talked about a whole lot, but my DNA results suggested that I was genetically inclined to high uric acid levels. So it was good to see that my body did not have high uric acid levels. The same goes for stress from salt. Genetically, I'm inclined to mishandle salt. That wasn't the case here. Same goes for bile acid. Good sign for my liver health. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the bacteria themselves. Viome gives you a comprehensive list of all of the bacterial strains from the stool sample you sent in. My particular sample came back with 128 different species. So a list of 128 names. However, they did not give specifics on the bacterial strains themselves. So I'm kind of looking at this list of just names, not knowing what's good and what's bad. So what I did was I used an AI service that is medically oriented for scientific information. It's called Quixosis AI. We're going to talk a little bit more about it now.
You can imagine I got a list of 128 different strains of bacteria. I didn't really know what to do with it all. I didn't know specifics about each bacterial strain, which one's good, which one's bad. And for the purpose of this podcast, I'm not going to give you outright all of 128. I don't think that would be particularly useful. But I did use AI to help me narrow down ones that are positively influential and those that are negatively influential. And with that information, I'm able to kind of distinguish, okay, what's important here, what's part of a normal microbiome, what's not, what's something that I can improve, what's something that I need to get rid of. And that's when I started to use Quixosis AI. And we're going to talk more about that and how it helped me decipher the long list of results that I got.
And so with Quixosis AI, these are some of the very unique features it offers. Diagnostic Brainstormer, you're able to talk about what you're experiencing, and AI is giving you possibilities for some of the things that you may need to be paying attention to. This is particularly important for people who are going to the doctor and not getting straight answers or not getting incomplete answers, just full on omission of information. We've got neurodivergent support that is giving you mental health options. It's giving you food and nutrition, lifestyle activities, things for that for those who are neurodivergent. Medical encounter coach. This is basically creating a script with you so that when you go to the doctor, you can present them with information and kind of tools so that you're not just going in there, just blindly listening to them or getting immediately shut down when you go to kind of advocate for yourself. Personalized stress manager, again, ways to help manage stress with food and lifestyle. Autoimmune diet recipe generator, it's been a lifesaver for me. And then support group finder, getting things where you can go and talk more about what you're experiencing with people who are also experiencing it. I use Quixosis AI every day, researching the things that I do about diabetes. I've got a special link for it. You can find that in the description if you're interested in learning more about it. So, for example, how I expanded on this list of 128 different strains, which I was just completely overwhelmed with. This was the prompt I used to get more out of that list. So I said, I've just taken a microbiome test. Can you briefly summarize the information on each specific bacterial strain? So I'm learning more about each of the specific strains. Additionally, create a ranking from 1 to 10 on how potentially influential that particular strain is on the development of an autoimmune disease like type 1 diabetes. So I'm learning more about each strain, and I'm using the AI to tell me which ones I need to be paying attention to on a scale of 1 to 10.
So I can't tell you how incredibly useful this tool is. So I was able to take 128 different species of bacteria I knew nothing about, and I got AI to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very influential, either positively or negatively, 1 being not influential at all, to rank my bacteria. So I knew to pay attention to, in this case, I was paying attention to anything 5 and above. And in the summary about each strain, I could tell, okay, is this supposed to be here? Is this not supposed to be here? Is this outright bad? Is this about imbalance? And from there, things just filled in.
And this is what I got. So it was, again, this is just a screenshot of the beginning of the list. It's much longer, but how awesome is this, right? So I'm able to go through, I read each of the descriptions, and based on their ranking, is it important? Is it not? For those that in the description, it mentioned being pro-inflammatory, infectious, anything bad, I labeled it red. Anything not ranked high and with a description that was relatively neutral, I left it blank. And then for the good, where it was talking about, making butyrate, short chain fatty acids, being anti-inflammatory, I labeled it green. So now I've got a full list of bacteria where I know what's good, I know what's bad, and I know why. And I have Quixosis AI to thank for that. So these were the all-stars, the good and also the not so all-stars, not so good. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm not going to go into each individual strain, but we can summarize each of them here. So obviously, short-chain fatty acid production, acetate, butyrate, and propionate. Those are the foods that my gut microbes are consuming and using to decrease inflammation. Great byproducts, and they are chronically low in those with autoimmune diseases. So it was good to see that I had bacteria that can make it for me. And they have a ton of these particular bacterial strains have a ton of health benefits. So some had to do with the gut lining integrity. Some had to do with increasing our regulatory T cell production, which if you watched episode 43, you know all about how regulatory T cells play a role in decreasing autoimmune sensitivity, and then improving gut-brain axis communication. So fortifying the integrity of my gut and its ability to talk with the brain. And then obviously the basic improving digestion. So limiting the inflammatory byproducts from incomplete digestion, and then also maximizing my nutrient extraction from the food that I am digesting. And then for the bad ones, inflammatory byproducts. These were there creating nasties that are associated with inflammation in the gut. Some of the bacteria were known for being more popular in guts that were in dysbiosis. So I had some degree of imbalance in my gut. Some of the strains were associated with particular issues, health issues like endocarditis, bacteremia, which is bacteria in the bloodstream, which is a popular side effect of leaky gut syndrome, as well as something like strep throat and scarlet fever, which I don't have, but it's just interesting that those microbiomes are associated with it. And then, interestingly enough, mold exposure and mycotoxin accumulation, in particular, the mold Aspergillus flavus, which is tied to peanut butter mold, which was disappointing for me because I love peanut butter. And at the time I took this test, I had been eating peanut butter. So just goes to show the whole mold and peanut butter thing is true. So now, with all of that information that I got, what else did Viome tell me I needed to do in order to improve it, right? So it gave recommendations for food, both from a things you need to eat and the things that you shouldn't be eating. And then it gave a customized list of supplements and probiotics to pay attention to. So, interestingly enough, here are my superfoods. These are the foods that Viome told me, hey, these are going to be winners for you. They're going to help grow the good microbiome. They're going to give you all of the anti-inflammatory to fight the bad microbiome. So I've categorized them here loosely by kind of what kind of food they are. We've got the meats here. So fish, interesting, anchovies and herring, and then lamb. Interestingly enough, I've never been inclined towards lamb, but I've started buying more of it now. Also, this list is not, there's a couple missing from here just because they're relatively obscure, but just this is how specific they are with foods. It's not something like, oh, eat more leafy greens, or oh, eat more fruit. It's like, no, they give specifics. Artichoke, dandelion greens, endive, fennel, spinach, garlic, ginger, oregano. Those are all good for me. I love those in my food. For fruits on the right hand side here, apple, cherry, fig, grapefruit, raspberry. They do give little descriptions on why each food is good for you. So some were anti-inflammatory, some were digestive fiber, some were like prebiotic, like apple has a lot of pectin in it. Pectin is good for your microbiome, all different kinds of things. So just an interesting little exercise I did using Quixosis AI with the list of superfoods I got. I asked it, I said, I was recommended a list of foods deemed superfoods based on my gut health. And I gave them all of the foods that I was recommended. And I asked it, can you speculate on any nutrient vitamin or mineral deficiencies based on these superfood recommendations. And sure enough, it read, it gave me all the feed out on the foods that I was eating and said, hey, based on this list, it looks like you are in need of prebiotics. It looks like you need some more dietary fiber, and it looks like you need more antioxidants. And that all checks out, right? The prebiotics and dietary fiber for feeding the good bacteria, and then antioxidants to take care of the bad. So it was kind of cool to be able to double check the results that I was getting. So these are my avoid foods. I'm so glad it was a short list. Bell pepper. This was because of a plant virus. So they said take 30 days off of eating bell peppers because in my gut, I tested for a plant virus and they were not sure about the implications for that virus on my gut health. They said just, get rid of it, see if it has a beneficial effect. And then cane sugar, couscous, molasses, white potato, and triticale, which is a type of wheat. I didn't even know that. But those are all frowned upon because of my blood sugar response. They said, based on your gut bacteria, all of these things are more likely to cause blood sugar dysregulation, which from here just makes complete sense, right? Cane sugar, molasses, and white potatoes. Obviously, I think honey was one of them as well. Might have been one of the minimized foods. And then tuna for heavy metals. So I'm thinking there may be some sort of heavy metal dysregulation a little bit in my gut. I'm not sure. Tuna was the only one where they specified to avoid it. So these are some of my supplement recommendations. There was more, but there just wasn't enough room for it. So the good thing about Viome is that, yes, they give you the list of recommendations so that if you want to do something about it on your own, you can go out and do this. They also work with a supplement provider that makes you a customized supplement that includes all of the things that you need. And I subscribe to that. I haven't gotten my supplements just yet, but they're on their way. So it's a great way to consolidate everything you need into one product. Cool thing to note, I've tried a lot of these things on my own. So it's good to see that I was doing the right thing all along. Some things have been added, but my takeaways from what's included here, right? We're looking to improve energy with the B vitamins, mitochondrial support, liver support. That makes complete sense to me. Lots of herbal extracts, a lot of ties to sleep, antioxidant, nervous system regulation, liver support, detox, and overall stress tolerance. So kind of like rebuilding my immunity, essentially, which checks out and kind of makes sense. Then my prebiotic and probiotic stack. Again, this is also not comprehensive. These are just some of the names included in my prebiotic, probiotic customized list. So take that for what it's worth. You can kind of see some recognizable ones. I mentioned apple pectin before. I know people are familiar with psyllium husk fiber, fructo oligosaccharides. This is a type of prebiotic. And I used AI for this as well to kind of learn more about each of the bacterial strains. But in general, the general focus was decreasing gut transit time. So decreasing how much time food spent in my system, decreasing gas production, improving the health of my gut lining, boosting natural killer cell formation. Again, check out episode 43. We talk all about natural killer cells. This is improving my natural innate immune system's ability to neutralize threats. Allergy management, shout out to the celiac disease. Boosting APC function. If you don't know what an APC is, go check out episode 43. It's all about recognizing antigens and antibodies in the body. Regulating blood sugar levels, need it, and then balancing the immune response. So those are all good things to have on my side. And this gut intelligence test, the silver one, is not the only one that they offer. So they also offer oral health test and a full body test. So this is everything. It's kind of like the gold package of everything. I ordered the silver one. It's really just based on how much insight you want. But I do have an affiliate link for this, so you can check that link out. I'll have that linked in the description as well. So in my 1 month, it's been 1 month since I started my pre and probiotic customized stack. Noticeable improvements, okay? The gut transit time is so noticeable. I'm eating foods on let's say a Monday morning. I am passing them Tuesday morning by Tuesday morning without fail. Lunch on a Monday is gone Tuesday morning, or on a Monday afternoon is gone Tuesday morning. So I'm at like a 12 to 18 hour turnaround time from in the mouth, out the butt. Increased insulin sensitivity, greater feelings of fullness. So I'm really eating less. That's something I had to work on a little bit in terms of pacing myself and not overeating. So there was a little bit of an adjustment period to that. Consistent and full BMs. Never really had an issue with consistency in terms of going to the bathroom. This is making what might have been 2 or 3 smaller BMs into one more full BM early in the morning, and then I'm not worried about it the rest of the day. Important notes. I'm not going to outright say that this is a negative. It's just a byproduct of change to the gut. I had a lot of gas in my first couple weeks of using these pre and probiotics. Tons of gas, really smelly. If you are with a partner or dating or going to school or work, just be forewarned, okay? Be forewarned. And I chalk this up to just being a period of adjustment. You're introducing new things. There's a war going on inside between the good and the bad, and gas is just one of the byproducts. So make sure to adjust your meal sizes accordingly. The more food you supply to a less ingrained microbiome, like one that's kind of in transit, like you need it to be well established. If it's not well established and you're giving it a lot of food, you're going to have a lot of gas. So when I decreased my food intake, my gas got better. The BMs that I am taking are a little messy, and I'm not going to get more descriptive than that, but make sure that you have high quality toilet paper. Invest in wet wipes and or a bidet. Christmas list, the bidet is on the Christmas list. I needed it 2 weeks ago, but here we are. And it has improved since. It's not outright terrible all the time. It's improving. But again, you're just kind of giving yourself some grace in that adjustment period. So there you have it. Okay, I can't thank you enough. There's a lot of different ways that you can support this channel. I've got codes for different supplements. If you get your supplement list back from Viome and you want to go out and order your own, a lot of them are available through the companies that I work with. Thorn Research, MitoLife, Ancient Bliss. They're all companies I trust. I've got links for them in the description. I've got my own educational material, ebooks, nutrition, and supplement guides. You can find those linked in the description as well. Don't forget about Quixosis AI, as well as the Viome product link as well. Everything will be linked in the description. Go ahead and check that out.
There you have it. We've run through everything. We've got why gut health is so important for those with diabetes. We've got my own personal experience, my own personal gut history, and why I thought I needed to pay more attention to my GI health. We've got the test, right? Viome's gut and health intelligence test, and all of the feedback that I got back from it, how I've used AI to help integrate what the test gave me into how I'm using it, and all of the improvements that I've experienced ever since. I can't thank you enough for being here along for the ride, watching me as I navigate, trying to put this all together. Thank you so much for being here. If you're not subscribed already, go ahead, click that subscribe button. If you're not following on TikTok, that's where I get a lot of short form content on social media at Bowie_Madison. I've got a whole slew of educational resources available. I'm just so glad to have you here. And so this is Bowie's Gut Check. I'm so happy you were here. Enjoy the rest of your day.